Before we start writing any code, let's take a moment and go through the overall design pattern that we will use for this course. And this is related to the API. So we will start with the user sending in requests to our system. And this request or the users will interact with a front-end application, which you can use anything. It can be React.js, it can be a Vue, it can be AngularJS, whatever your flavor is of a front-end application. And in this course, we will be using Nuxt.js. So when that request comes into Laravel, we are going to intercept it in something called a data transfer object. So this is going to be something similar to what you might be used to already in Laravel called the form requests, which takes care of validating the input data or whatever the user is sending into the system. And based on that validation, if it passes, then we can forward that request to our controllers to handle the request. Otherwise, we send it back to the user with errors to say, hey, you're violating some validation criteria and you need to take a look at it. So we will not be using form request, which is a traditional request class that comes with Laravel, but we will be using data transfer objects, and you will see how that works in a moment. Once that request hits the controllers, of course, they're coming through a route, and so those routes are directly linked to controllers. So we do assume that anything coming in is hitting the controller, and the routes are just there to tell us which controller and which methods those requests should be pointed to. Once they hit the controller, we will try and make the controllers as light as possible to not interact with the database. All right. So all our database interaction will be done through actions. And so if a user wants to create a profile or log into the system, we will simply collect the data from the request, which is in the form of a data transfer object, and send it to a login action. And that action will be responsible for talking to the respective models and interact with the database to validate the user session, to see if the password is correct, the username is correct, and things like that. So our controllers will really not be talking directly to the models. As far as the code we write, the control that we have with talking to the database, we will try not to do it in the controllers, but forward all the requests to the actions. And you will see how that works. We'll create our own action classes that perform these jobs. And those actions will interact with the models, the database, send back the response to the controller, and the controller, if there's any data that needs to go back to the front end, it will simply forward that back to the user as a response. So this is the overall design pattern we are going to follow in this course. And it just makes for a cleaner way to write your code and to organize things to understand what's going on a little bit better.